Rishi Sunak is quite busy. There's been lots of criticism and feedback to this. This is we were expecting a bit of a bigger reshuffle. That one got delayed, so this is like a little mini one. We've seen now that Grant Shapps, he's the new Defence Secretary, basically. I think this is something like his fifth job, Grant Shapps' fifth job in the space of a year, sorry. And I just wonder, you just heard Emily Formby there saying it's basically, reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. What do you make to it?
Well, I mean, the problem with that comment is it's slightly superfluous, isn't it? Because it's got to do something. I mean, it can't just have a vacancy. But you're right about Grant Shapps. I mean, he has had 7 cabinet roles since 2012, and he's been Secretary of State for Energy, Security, Business, Energy and Industrial, Home Department, Transport, and finally Defence. It's like the magic roundabout, isn't it? But slightly more surreal. The thing is, it's a mini shuffle. Everyone was expecting, as you said, a bigger shuffle, but I think the plan is to do that just before the next election. Now, whether Rishi Sunak is brave enough to do that is another matter. The thing I find quite astonishing about this is I have got no idea what Grant Shapps knows about defence. He probably doesn't either. I know he's got friends who live in the Ukraine. But there was no red wall MPs used, Michelle, and I think that is so important now to that sort of embracing the North, getting those votes back on side, because I think it's dangerous playing that game where he's just really literally got his mates, those that have supported him.
Well, this is one of the points that our new political editor, Christopher Herb, or Chopper, some of you might know him as, this is one of the things that he was talking about on his Twitter earlier on, and he says, and I'm quoting him directly, he reckons there's a massive reshuffle and a government reset plan for October, he says, before the King's speech will be on November the 7th. And he makes a big point about this whole kind of red wall thing. But let's go back to this, the fact that there's this mini reshuffle in the first place, Grant Shapps now in that prominent role. Do you think this is going to make much of a difference in the short term to the government's fortunes?
No, I don't think so. I think it really sums up Rishi Sunak's tenure as Prime Minister in that it's incremental, indecisive, immediately forgettable. The other person who's been elevated, she may be very talented, Claire Coutinho. 99.9% of the public hasn't heard of her. She's 38, apparently very talented. And in a way, it's an interesting mirror image to Rishi Sunak. He seems a reasonably decent, capable legislator. He would be a nice Under-Secretary to the Treasury or maybe Business Secretary, but he hasn't got that oomph to be the Prime Minister. And this seems one of those moments where that lack of oomph is being sort of reflected in his choices.
When you've got someone like a Boris Johnson that's filled with oomph, and personality and all the rest of it, then you get the criticism, he's a showman, he's got too much oomph. Then you put someone in that's a bit more of a steady Eddie, then it's like, he's not got enough oomph. You can't win.
Well, that wasn't... I never said that. I think the public wants people in charge who can solve their problems, but you absolutely need to be able to garner people's attention and keep it. Boris Johnson was very good at that, Rishi Sunak less so. Like I say, very capable politician, but you're a figurehead at the top of the government, and I think the choices he's made here, like I say, reflect the fact that he's quite a forgettable, indecisive character.
But don't you think, Erin, that the problem voters have got with this election that's looming very fast is the fact that both main parties, are led by two men that are exactly like that. They're probably very steady, very capable.
Yeah.
I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, a barrister, forensic, boring, fine line. But they're both out of the same mould. Yeah. But, I mean, as you were saying, Michelle, you're quite right. I mean, Boris Johnson had full of personality. Look where that got us. Donald Trump, full of personality. Look where that got America. What do we want? But, come the next election, everyone's going to be scratching their heads and going, well, I don't know what any of you stand for.
One thing that I was going to say annoys me, but I think everything annoys me these days, so I need to find a different word. One of the things it just annoyed me. Let's just say what it is. I was listening to Emily Formby a second ago on the headlines with Tatiana a second ago, and she was basically saying this country needs change, and that change is Labour. And there's something about politics in this country where I really dislike the arrogance of the two main parties.
Totally.
They sit there and they think it's either Tory or it's Labour. And there's just something about that. And yes, I do understand that is the kind of first past the post system that we have. But there's something about it I don't like. Am I missing something?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think you're actually capturing something of the zeitgeist, Michelle, because there was a poll out earlier this week from Redfield and Wilton. That doesn't really matter where it came from for your audience. But they found that 44% of undecided voters would be willing to vote for a new party. and perhaps more remarkably, 30% just under of both Labour and Tory voters would be looking to go for a new party. So you've got 35, 40% of the public looking for something new and agree with that really the big two have nothing to offer. But as you say, with the electoral system we have, it's very hard to see how something different emerges. And this duopoly we have in politics I think it's the most destructive aspect of the Westminster system, frankly.
Yeah, and I ran for election in 2019 as the Brexit Party candidate. And what we did, actually, on reflection, is we just split the vote.
Yes,
so people who were Brexiteers in Hull, West Hull we call it, but Hull West and Hessel is the correct name. Anyway, if you was a Brexiteer, it's like, right, do I go with Nigel's party or do I believe Boris and go with the Tories? What do I do? So in the end, what we achieved is we split the Brexiteers down the middle. Yeah. We split them. Labour got in through the middle and actually Labour got re-elected with more people voting against them than voting for them, if you see what I mean.
That's the problem you've got. I mean, people aren't voting for Labour and their policies, they're voting against the current government. I mean, don't you find out when you get to this stage with the government being in power for this length of time, people are going to do that no matter what the policies are on both sides. They just want to get this lot out, as it were. So I just think the trouble we've got before the next election due is we can't change the system in time. So whatever happens, people will be voting against the party in power at the moment, but not particularly voting for Labour because no one really knows what they stand for, including Keir Starmer. But there are alternatives. You say, Michelle, they're just going to split the vote with the other parties standing.
But then a lot of people watching that will be shouting at the telly saying, God, do not give us proportional representation. They would argue that all you're going to achieve there is hung parliaments and coalitions and all the rest of it.
I think we're going to have hung parliament in any case.
Well, that was a good argument until 2010, but then since then, of course, we've had two hung parliaments. We've had permanent chaos, really, for the last 10 years in British politics. Well, so I don't know if that really has purchase anymore.